Sandy Cheeks is a time traveler who has been going through the entire SpongeBob timeline, fixing the little problems of our square friend and making a few mistakes along her way. Despite what it seems, this squirrel is simply not just here to study the sea life, but instead make sure that reality stays together. And oh boy, is he making it difficult. Sandy from SpongeBob is for sure one of my favorite characters from the show, probably because she has some of the best episodes, but it did make me question why there are so few episodes with Sandy in the show. For example, season 3, season 10, season 11, 14, 15, they all have very little Sandy. Like in season 15, Sandy is in 2 episodes. Only 2! This, of course, is a very saddening fate for my favorite character of SpongeBob, but it did make me question what exactly is she doing during this time. Well, after some very deep theorizing and finding a very interesting image, I think it actually may be a real SpongeBob conspiracy. And well, the strangeness doesn't end there. That's just the bare bones what's going on with this squirrel. Like, why is Sandy in Camp Coral as a kid with SpongeBob when he meets her as an adult? Or why is she friends with so many British and French scientists when she's apparently from Texas? Or more importantly, why is Sandy from the past in Camp Coral talking to future Sandy? Well, it would all make sense if Sandy could and was time traveling. Let me explain. There are 3 things we need to prove or figure out to this theory, being that Sandy is time traveling, why she is time traveling, and a secret thing I can't reveal yet. Now, first jumping to time travel feels like, well, a jump, but to be honest, it really isn't. As well, of course, there's little details that prove something is going on with the lack of Sandy in many episodes, or Sandy always being up to something. The real big thing that proves it is this.
Good work, little Sandy. I knew sending you to Camp Coral was the right thing to do. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Over and out. Bye, future me. Mission accomplished, timeline preserved. Now everything can continue just the way it's always been.
So this is just time travel? It's literally canon now? My theory is practically proven, and I have no idea what else to say. This scene is just basically Camp Coral's solution to why Sandy as a child is in Camp Coral with a child-aged cast when she meets SpongeBob as an adult. But it is very interesting that they chose not only time travel, but future Sandy sending past Sandy on an actual mission to fix the timeline, mainly because that's my literal exact theory. Now, you could still say, okay, fine, she time traveled once, meaning she could time travel, but the proof she is still doing so is non-existent. And well, you would be right. So far, this still isn't enough proof to say Sandy is time traveling actively and apparently fixing the timeline, as I've said, until you look at this. This is artwork posted on the official SpongeBob Twitter account, basically acting as one of the possible solutions for why Patrick's parents are different in the Patrick show. Most importantly, the header for this image being, continued tampering with space-time by an unknown force has caused tears in the fabric of reality. Now, there are a few things we can take away from this artwork. For one, we know Sandy isn't the one who made it if it existed in canon, because it very much is centered on Sandy. The conspiracy board also is a queer map of Bikini Bottom with X's on different locations, except for the very important Conch Street. This is important because Conch Street is the same street that Patrick, SpongeBob, Squidward, and apparently down the road, Sandy's tree dome is. And the more important thing is, out of all these houses, Sandy's tree dome has an actual sketch about the street with a giant arrow and circle. This is literal proof that Sandy is the focus of this conspiracy board. So by now I think you definitely are at least mostly believing that Sandy is doing something to the timeline, with her being very much a central piece of a canon conspiracy with someone messing with the literal timeline. But like, if you're not, I guess I can keep going. For example, Sandy's in the background as an adult in this selfie with kid SpongeBob, or the sketch of medieval Sandy from the episode Dungeons and Dragons literally saying she only existed in history books past the date of 2006. All these things just point to Sandy time traveling. But why? Why is Sandy going back in time pretending to be a medieval warrior or gorilla or messing with SpongeBob and Patrick at Camp Coral? Well, I think it all comes down to one single thing we're missing. What do all these things on this conspiracy board, or anytime we see time traveling, or just something weird, or does Sandy's entire character have in common? They all involve SpongeBob, but more importantly, Sandy fixing his problems. Whether with Sandy in the actual show making a crazy invention and saving the day, or in this theory, her going back in time and pretending to be a medieval warrior, it always ends with Sandy fixing problems SpongeBob started. Now this is the real theory. Sandy is going back in time, not only just fixing SpongeBob's little mistakes, but making sure the timeline stays intact, whether it's making sure Plankton doesn't get the formula in the past, or SpongeBob and Patrick get back to the future, because well, SpongeBob and Patrick do have a tendency to accidentally time travel, messing around with very important things, so I'm sure she is responsible for fixing those episodes. Or when SpongeBob rips the universe apart into a string, or angers a dolphin deity, or accidentally kills a man, or whatever horrible mistake SpongeBob made that actually had horrible consequences, I think she is probably responsible for fixing it. This explains a big problem with the show, being that while episodic, it still follows some kind of timeline, mainly with the amount of references in current episodes, which basically now cementing certain things in the past. But if there is a timeline, how do moments like SpongeBob infinitely time traveling into an alternate reality with Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy ever get fixed? Unless Sandy fixes everything, resetting basically into a simple status quo. Now this theory doesn't end here though, because I still have one little question, being in this conspiracy board that is basically the whole reason this theory exists is, well, canon. Who in the show possibly made it? Like, this conspiracy is so in-depth, and to be fair, whoever made it did literally figure it out. They learned it was basically Sandy messing with the fabric of reality, or personally, my idea is SpongeBob is messing with it and she is fixing it, but in the end, they both do time travel, so they mess it up together. Now, who made this conspiracy board? I have a few ideas. One of my ideas was it could be Plankton. He's pretty smart himself, and later season, he and Sandy are even frenemies, so maybe he figured out after one of his many chess games with her, or when doing some evil plot and being foiled by a time-traveling Sandy. But even with all that, I just don't buy it would be Plankton, especially because most of the evidence he would use in the conspiracy board he was not there for, like the gorilla, or Camp Coral, or medieval past world. This leaves only 3 characters left, one of them already ruled out, being Sandy, leaving only SpongeBob and Patrick, the only people in all those scenes, be behind this conspiracy. Now, we can very easily rule out Patrick by just one single thing, that the central image with SpongeBob as a kid is a selfie Patrick couldn't have taken or even have in the first place. This leaves only SpongeBob left, which actually makes a lot of sense. Let's say SpongeBob just went through some old photos and has a weird moment where he realizes he knew Sandy as a kid, then finds this weird selfie with a grown adult Sandy in the background. Then he goes on a little trip and, well, figures out Sandy is doing something very weird, maybe even time traveling. Then he starts asking questions. Why was he so weirdly bulgy as a kid? Or even when was he a kid? Or how long has he been working at the Krusty Krab? But being SpongeBob, he can't just go to Sandy. Now he's fully convinced he needs to do this all on his own, which he has done similar things in the past, like when he thought the entire town were aliens, so instead of just talking to Sandy, he locked them all up. So SpongeBob does exactly what Sandy is doing in the first place, time traveling. He's already a weird dimensional warper when he needs to be, so I'm sure he could figure it out, and well, how else is he gonna solve why Sandy is time traveling without doing it himself? Now this would then create a very stupid paradox. The humor is not lost to me. It's very funny, of course, because if he keeps time traveling because Sandy, then Sandy will just keep time traveling because the whole reason she is doing this is to stop SpongeBob from doing things like time travel, which will create a stupid infinite loop of talking animals altering a reality instead of communicating like adults. And that's the theory. I think this theory suddenly became one of my more bizarre and weird ones, but I do think it actually has a lot of good evidence if you really pay attention, and at the very least could somewhat be canon. Now it's left on you to imagine what could happen next, like Sandy and SpongeBob, God forbid, talking about their weird time traveling game, but they haven't yet, and with the show needing infinite episodes, they probably won't. Either way, if you like this theory, why not subscribe and watch the video on screen for more. Bye!